The term pigeonholed applies a lot to people in the entertainment industry who are actors and actresses. And to boil it down, it means that this actor or actress is so famous for a role that they played, whether it was in a movie or a television show, that no matter what they do afterwards, they are only compared and remembered by that one role. It can become increasingly frustrating, and especially if that artist never makes peace with the idea of that role that they played. They never shake it, and they can never really be satisfied by any of their work. And sadly, it even starts to affect their outlook moving forward as well, their work moving forward. The same concept of being pigeonholed can also apply to musicians, even though it's not quite well known in the music industry. However, this dilemma faced the artist that we're talking about this week, Leon Bridges. Now, if you don't know, his very first album, Coming Home, is the one that set the bar for the story that we're about to tell and how it relates to this idea of being pigeonholed. So to set up our story, you have to rewind back to June of 2015. This was the release of his debut studio album. It was called Coming Home. And a lot of his fans know it. You know, if anything, a lot of his fans came in because of this record. You know, it was so different from anything that you've heard, I would say, released in the past like 15 years. It was so different. This album, you could say it's blues, it's R&B, and it's soul, but it's really the quality of the music. It's really the sound of the music that, you know, a lot of times he's been compared to Sam Cooke on this record. It's so different. You know, it's very 60s style of music. You know, I almost, I did this trick. I played his album to my parents one time, and they said, oh, you know, I never heard of this person. This is probably somebody that came out around my time. And, you know, that's when I had to say, well, no, this came out in 2015. Now, the idea of playing either modern hits with kind of like a 50s, 60s style type of play is not new. In fact, if you look at a lot of YouTube channels, that was a very big thing, especially in the past couple of years. You know, as YouTube got bigger and bigger, is you would see people come out and cover newer songs with that 50s, 60s style of play. But it was very rare to hear people play original songs in this style. And that's exactly what Leon Bridges did. And he caught popularity very, very quickly. You know, Coming Home had two big singles off of it, the same title, Coming Home and Smooth Sailing. And he was well known for that sound that he had, that retro sound, I guess we could call it. And in fact, he really leaned into it when he was first promoting this album. If you watch videos of them performing live, whether it was in concert venues or whether it was played live on television, you know, he did the Saturday Night Live, he did a lot of the talk shows. The way that he's dressed, him and his band, is from that era. You know, they have the retro look. They have the look to them as they're playing. So even to promote this album, he really leaned into it. And again, he was successful. You know, it peaked in the top 10 albums in the United States and the United Kingdom. So it definitely worked, you know. But if you look at his interviews, this idea that I said in the beginning of being pigeonholed really started to hit him, and he almost feared it. You know, he did not want to be known as the guy that made this retro album. And in one interview specifically, he even mentioned, could he have made, you know, maybe 3 or 4 Coming Home-esque style albums? Probably. And would they have been pretty big? Yeah. No, I mean, like any artist who kind of just doesn't change their artistic vision, yeah, maybe his popularity eventually would have kind of whittled down. But I definitely think if he made a few more, he would have had very, very huge success. I know me and myself, I still love that first album. And I almost do wish that he would make more albums just like it. But again, he did not want to do that. He didn't want to be known as just the guy that plays retro albums. And so in 2018, he made the album called Good Thing. And it was subtle, the change. You know, he didn't drastically change the style that he was going for. But I would say Good Thing goes a lot into blues and a little into jazz as well. So you see he's kind of leaving that 50s, 60s retro rock and roll sound, and he's moving into jazz and blues on Good Thing. Now, he did have some, especially one of the biggest singles off this album was called Beyond. That was very different. That wasn't even like the first album. That was kind of like a almost country ballad as well. So he was really starting to expand himself as an artist. You know, he did not want to stay in that box. He wanted to grow, and he wanted his music to grow as well. So, he did kind of lose some listeners to this one. A lot of people expected him to make more of that retro style music, but it didn't happen. So it did very well, though. It debuted at number 3 in the U.S. Billboard 200. So it still did very well, and he was nominated for awards as well. And then in July of 2021, he released the album Gold Digger's Sound, which was an album that the name came from the place that he was staying at was called that. And not only did he live there, but that's where he produced and made the album as well. And this is where I feel like he left even blues and he went into R&B. So now he's almost completely left behind that retro rock and roll sound, and he's almost completely into a different genre. If you were to compare that first and third album, you would not even be able to know, barely even tell, like, hey, is this the same guy? Like, it's completely different. But the good news is, again, he had success. This album was nominated for Best R&B Album at the 2022 Grammy Awards, and it did very well. It sold very well. And a lot of people kind of saw it as his way to kind of break free from that first album as well. But that's kind of where I leave it in his story. He has successfully kind of left that umbrella of the first album and was able to venture out and make, kind of his own sound that he was looking for. But this is the question that I pose to all of you. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Now, a lot of people, of course, say, well, as your own artist, that's the freedom that you have, is you're able to just make whatever music that you want. And sometimes people are just going to have to get used to it, and he's not alone, of course, in being maybe the first artist to kind of shake what made him popular and then successfully leave it in the past and move on to making music that he wants to make. But man, I know I'm not alone. Would anybody love to hear more of that coming home kind of style music? I don't know. It was so refreshing to hear it because I remember seeing him. I forget if it was when he was on Saturday Night Live or what other performance it was, but I remember it just blew my mind to see somebody play that style of music in today's modern age, where you have, especially hip hop has taken over, rock and roll even is a little different. Indie is basically, died off. And so it was so cool to just kind of hear that sound just kind of stand out differently. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Could there be another coming home kind of style record? Is it good that he left it behind? I want to hear from y'all. Thank you so much for the support, and I will talk to you all later next week. Thank you.